If the Predator was in Lord of the Rings, how far do you think it would get? Like, could anyone kill the Predator in Lord of the Rings?
I mean,
would Frodo stand a chance?
No, Frodo.
No, Frodo's
No.
okay. Not Frodo.
And Aragorn wouldn't stand a chance because if Legolas can't see him, then there's no way that they can both survive.
Legolas's elven eyes. He couldn't see him because he's invisible.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
Well, I mean, you're dealing with technology here. We're
Right.
talking like he can push a button and go invisible, and then come up behind you and eat the back of your face.
Yeah.
What? Hold on.
And you would never see it coming.
Eating the back of your face?
Yes, you start at the back of the skull and work your way to the front.
So all that would be left was your face, your skull, and everything else is gone.
Yeah.
I bet mine tastes like potatoes. Remember that from the Lord of the Rings movie? Remember that moment? That's a word that's said in it.
It's
Remember?
it's in the movie.
Yeah, it is.
What are taters, Precious?
You wound up with nasty chips.
Yeah, you're right. Gollum would win.
So if Gollum was trying to give some food to Jon Snow, how would it go? Just tell me. Just so.
I don't want it.
Try some of this fishes. Me like say raw. You know nothing, Jon Snow. You'll never have any friends.
I don't want them.
Nobody likes you.
What would it be like for Jon Snow to accept potato chips from Gollum?
I think they'd both be blown away by the packaging of the potato chips in that little Lay's
Is there
bag.
that much air? Yeah, there is that much air in a Lay's potato chip bag that it would blow them away if they opened it up. You're right.
The winds of winter would just blow them away.
The winds of winter is actually a Lay's bag being opened up.
I mean, you could probably go scuba diving with just a bag of Lay's potato chips as your respiration device.
And this now the entire prophecy that's now having to come true north of the wall is just they're scared of this potato chip bag now blowing in the wind. We can't kill it. We're trying to shoot it with arrows. It won't die. It keeps coming at us. And it's a shiny bag. They're just so trigger happy.
I think the elves could deal with the Predator.
Long story short.
There it is. There it is.
They banished Morgoth from reality, so...
Hey, everybody. I'm Dane Holland.
I'm Austin Shazam Phifer.
I'm Marcus. I'm Electric Man.
I'm Austin Tiny Zent.
And this is Nerd It Through the Grapevine, the podcast where four best friends gather weekly to talk about our favorite parts of past, present, and future nerd culture.
And today, we're going to talk about the newest rendition of D&D. So, Wizards of the Coast recently released a video, recently as in a couple weeks ago, talking about 5th edition passing away and the rise of what they're calling 1D&D.
Wait, what? 5th edition is almost over?
Yes, in 2024 they're going to release 1D&D.
But I just almost got all the books.
I know, and to have all of the books at this point, you're going to spend roughly $1,200 or a little more. That's a guesstimation, people. I've not done the math. You can do that if you wish. The good thing is all of your supplemental books outside of your core books will still be able to work in 1D&D. So you haven't wasted your money. The only thing that they're really revamping is the core books, the PHB, with Player's Handbook, the Monster Manual, and the DM's Guide. They're going to restructure that a little bit to make them more user-friendly for new players. And Wizards of the Coast has also recently acquired D&D Beyond. I don't know why I had to think about that.
Oh, the actual online database?
Yes, it is
Cool.
now part of the Wizards family.
So now it costs you to get on there and pay for your character sheets.
It already costs you to do certain things in it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a base that's always been free,
Right.
But
But
now it has money funneled into it
Yeah.
to where it can be more.
They introduced microtransactions to it more or less, so you get essentially all the things free from as far as like your races, your classes, your backgrounds from the player's handbook, the 3 core books. Now, you can't really delve deep into them because unless you start paying them some money, you can only level up to about the 3rd level. After that, there's a cost accrued, and then you can level up all the way to 20. I personally don't use D&D Beyond, but I know people that do, and they love it. And so to include the other races and playable things, you can buy them in small little chunks. Or you can buy, like if you buy the new source book, you get everything from that, be it the race or the class or what have you. So you can do it a couple different ways.
You just got to do all the math yourself.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the way you save the most money is to buy their bundle deal of everything, but that's a big chunk of change.
Yeah, that's what they planned on anyway.
Yeah. And, they're saying that now that they're wanting to have one place that you can play all of D&D, have all the materials, have it all digital, because they want to, in the future, with new releases of books that, companion books or source material, to include a digital copy. So you won't have to buy it twice anymore. You buy it once and you have it.
That's brilliant. That's what I've always wanted.
Yeah. Other games have done this, like Vampire the Masquerade. You get a PDF of the rule book when you buy it. So D&D, why are you so behind on this? But it's now becoming a thing, and that's kind of cool. And one thing that they're including with that is, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but for years now, people have used Roll20 to have a digital tabletop in order to play the game with somebody across the country that they know, or even new friends. And so you have a map that can be interacted with. You can move your characters around, put in obstacles and all those things. Well, now they're going to have that on D&D Beyond. And it's going to be rendered with the Unreal Engine. So it's going to be a 3D map. They're using a camera technique called tilt shift. So it's kind of up above you, but kind of tilted down and makes everything look small. So it makes it look like a tabletop, but with like really good video game graphics.
That's exciting.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
it's really cool. And they're going to give you a initial dungeon. And some of this that I'm talking about right now is actually out to be play tested. So I don't know how extensive it is. I haven't got the chance to download it and play with it, but you're going to be able to disassemble that dungeon and reassemble it in whatever configuration you wish, and buy other pieces to add other things to it.
Yeah, so it's like a base asset package.
Yeah,
basically.
pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're going to release things throughout the course of time to add to it.
And like that gives me so much hope for the future of this kind of thing, because I don't know if it exactly works like this, but this is at least feasible to have like a living, breathing map.
Yeah, that's
of like the Forgotten Realms that you can just like sit there and put your tokens on, your little minis or whatever. Pause it when you need to, download it, completely revamp it, and have your version of the Forgotten Realms or whatever world you create.
Initially, that's the goal that they're
That's
wanting.
so cool.
Because the little bit that they showed with their official video, it looked very immersive. It looked like you was playing a video game, except you have a mini you're moving around, and you can adjust your mini into different poses, and they're going to have character customization. So if you play any of the mini races, you can have that as your character, and it's all digital and right there. So the character you designed, you can move around the map and interact with the environment.
This is them like finally grasping the fact that it's hard for people to find time to physically gather together to play D&D. Like the main thing that every group of people that plays D&D together deals with is the fact that not everybody always shows up or can be there or anything like that. But now you have less of a reason to not be able to make it if you've got this awesome stuff you can do from your computer and the comfort of your own house.
Yeah, you don't even have to put on pants.
Yeah, no, not even a little bit. Well, if we played together, none of us would have to either. But that's because we're so close.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good thing. But this is something that for people that don't even really necessarily want to play D&D, this is still stuff they can use for other things, like bringing these ideas you have in your mind to life within this system, because you don't have to play D&D in it. You could just make your own little world.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a dungeon with assets in the grid map to use. Because you could theoretically play any system, but would have kind of that D&D style look.
Right.
But with the introduction of Spelljammer, who knows? because they brought in more sci-fi stuff, kind of space things, and so that is becoming more of a thing in D&D. So who knows where it's actually going to go, because they're talking about expanding it massively and using 5th edition as a base on which to build the D&D of the future.
So the D&D 1, it sounds like, because they're not getting rid of the supplemental
D&D.
books. I apologize. 1 D&D. They're not. The mechanics are staying the same.
They're going to tweak them a little bit. From what I've seen, they're going to make the feats more of a thing. Whereas now they're just kind of there. You're like, I could take an ASI or a stat increase. So basically, Marcus, say your strength is 17, I can now make that 18. That's what an ASI is. Or you can use a feat, which would be, like I'm going to be like Shield Master, so now I can Shield Bash or whatever. They're going to make them more relevant and actually cool for the game, because right now, feats are just kind of meh.
So it sounds more like a DLC kind of thing, like
Kinda.
a physical
Yeah.
DLC. Well, now that it's going to be on D&D
Right.
Beyond, it is a digital DLC.
Exactly. And some of these supplemental books may go away, because recently, with the introduction of Monsters of the Multiverse, Mordenkainen's Tome of Everything is now an obsolete book.
Aw.
So it may happen. I mean, you can still pull monsters from it, but
Yeah.
they've tweaked a lot of the monsters that are in that
Gotcha.
to make them better and cooler. But yeah, so that may happen along the way, but for the most part, everything that you purchased, it will still be relevant and being able to be used in 1 D&D.
Gotcha. Because it's not often that they just make the new system. I
Right.
mean, D&D has been going on for how many freaking years?
Yeah, well, like 5th edition alone has been around since 2014.
A while. Yeah. And
So-
it's one that people have praised so much that I haven't heard a lot of people going like, we need a new system.
Right.
Like, and I think they realize that too, which is why they're mainly keeping the same thing.
I have heard a couple people fuss about 5th edition, but mainly it's that old timer that remembers D&D from the 70s, which was a childhood, and he's
Right.
like, yeah, I think 5th edition is stupid. Your characters can't be customized as much. And I'm like, what?
What are you talking
What
about?
have you been smoking,
Yeah.
bro? That's a discussion I will not partake in with one of those individuals, because I'm like, he looks like he's got PTSD. Just throwing that out there.
But
So-
you can still use the old books and play that version if you want. You don't
yeah,
have to use the new
absolutely,
stuff.
absolutely. You like AD&D? Play AD&D. I don't care.
I wonder if this is something that they're going to implement into the digital, like D&D Beyond. It may already be there because I've not used it much.
Yeah.
But to be able to say play like second advanced edition D&D,
I
like
honestly don't know.
like to be able to choose that. I wonder if that's something they would consider.
I mean, surely it could happen. at some
It should
point.
be easy, right? I mean,
it
there's
should be.
Just
plug
upload
that
it.
in.
Yeah,
Well, I
you
mean,
plug it in.
realistically, there are digital character sheets on there, and with different editions, you do need different character sheets.
Right.
So you would have to use something as a supplement, and if you was going to do that, like Discord or something, if you wanted to, I mean, you're going to have to share your character sheet with your DM.
Yeah.
I'd consider that a requirement at my table.
Oh yeah.
Just to make sure everything's laid out right, and that the game's fair for everybody, because I've unfortunately had a player that cheated before, and it makes
Cheat at an
makes a bad
imaginary
time.
tabletop game is the dumbest thing ever.
The steps that are necessary now to continue the evolution of gaming, it's getting to where the most creative parts were the ones that we had in our imagination. But the way that the AI stuff is going now, the predictive nature of the AI, the way that the AI can, upon just these prompts, develop what's going on around it. Say you're already in these maps. Okay, and the maps are able to, rearrange however you want to rearrange them before you start this game. You can preset them like this. Now you get a first-person perspective of this and get to see your character. Now, this is what I'm seeing as the future of this future that's coming.
Yeah.
So you are now actually seeing the world as your character, and this is almost like you've got your obelisk or whatever kind of virtual reality gear you've got on your head. And
Oculus?
Oh, yeah. What do I call it?
Obelisk? An obelisk is like a
that's
monument.
that's
it's like
the
a statue thing.
Oculus.
Yes.
Yeah. So you've got that on, and you've got the VR experience happening to where everything you're looking around you is actually what you're seeing for your D&D campaign. And you're able to meet with these people and, guide yourself through these things. And upon your successes or fails, you get to actually see this in real time, your successes or fails. as they've been plugged in.
But you still have somebody.
Could be cool.
I think it could be, and I was kind of thinking of a very similar thing, but maybe not as like maybe Oculus oriented. But just think, like, you have this living, breathing, like, virtual tabletop with 3D graphics and everything. You can customize it however you want for your players, and then you plug your D&D Beyond sheet right into the code, and then boom! Now every time now instead of rolling dice, you just click on your ability, and it does it for you and decides whether or not it's successful. I mean, it's a very video gamey.
I mean, that's kind of how it works, because you can, like, even on the phone app, you can sit there and roll the dice. Now, at my table in person, I require physical dice. Unless you have to roll like 30 dice, then please use a roller. I'm not going to put you through that hell, because I've been through that hell. But the issue with what you're saying from a DM's perspective, that's awesome for a player. For a DM, how would that work, though? Because now I have to embody, as the DM, all these NPCs and everything. I'm basically the world in which you live.
See,
and
the
narrate.
DM, I could see that the DM's role in this whole thing would actually take a more, a bigger role in this, because not only are you the one who is in control of the narrative and writing the narrative and making everything so, you're the prompt. In order to plug these things in, you're the one who has to input what's happening in the story.
Yeah.
So why would you not be the source of where the prompt is or is not allowed through?
I mean, that's technically how it works anyway.
So all you're doing is now being the prompter for this creation, and you can narrate the way that it's going through, and then or however you'd want to. I don't know. I mean, it's still in the future, hasn't been created.
Right.
But, what would you think would be a better option for it? Just as long as you're getting to actually visually see it.
Yeah. Well, I think with this idea, like as a DM, your layout would be different, like to where you can click on a player and see through their eyes in that moment. Yeah. Like, so if you need to see from what they're looking at to be like, okay, how would this work out? Click on their player, and all of a sudden you're looking through their eyes, like through this Oculus idea of a first person set in this map, digitally idea, the video gaming style. I think as the DM, you've got way more options. Like Austin, you couldn't see through Marcus's character's eyes on your screen. Like you only have access to your stuff.
Yeah.
But as a DM, you can switch around to see who you're looking through and also get your bird's eye view of the situation too.
Or you could just have your folder of assets, drop in your ogres and your trolls where you want them, and say you have some sort of invisible enemy, drop them right in, and just cut all the visibility off from the players until you're ready to reveal it.
Yeah.
Because and also the creation point of it can come even harder from the brains of the players, because not it was limited to imagination, because that can work both ways.
Well, and like, what do I see?
Yeah.
It was like some of that you may just want to leave behind. Like, oh, well, look at your screen. That's what you see.
Yes. So instead of it being like what's limited to what you can perceive in your own mind, like it's already doing some ridiculous stuff, because the Unreal Engine can make some insane things.
Now, I like some elements of this. The only thing that I really have kind of an issue with is like perception checks.
Yeah.
Okay, for the uninitiated, let's say you're walking through the forest, and as a DM, I want approaching horse steps. Okay, that's what I want them to hear. So I just tell them, hey, roll a perception check.
Yeah, that's fine.
And say only one person hears. Well, okay, maybe that's a bad example. Let's say it's visually.
Yeah.
So they're looking for
a horse,
a key to a lock, or looking for anything, okay? And they're in this room, and they roll a perception check. Well, he can see it, but the other ones can't see it. So how would that work with that?
Click on the asset for that character's visual.
Yeah, you allow them to see it.
Yeah, like
that
all of a
seems like
sudden
a lot.
it appears.
It does.
For them.
It does seem like a lot.
I mean, it's still cool, but it's
all going to come down to streamlining it to where can they make it user friendly enough to where anyone can run this. And of course, as a DM, even on the tabletop version, you have to know so much more about the game than the players do. And I think that's going to be the same situation for this digital situation, because like this is an idea of a future implementation of D&D Beyond, but it's not that far away.
No, it's really not.
Because think about it, there's already games where you have like user created quest lines and stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean, you treat it much like that. I mean, because basically we're talking about D&D being codified into a computer program,
right?
Where your digital player does what your digital player is equipped to do.
And if they can make it user friendly and the access to being able to actually DM a game is there laid out in front of you. You don't have to be deep diving into lore and know all this stuff because it can pull up right what you're wanting to do. Like you set your quest lines or whatever you're wanting to do, and you can go along with what the story is that's laid out before you. That's awesome.
Or you can make your own.
Exactly.
And that's what I think the future. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, I was just saying, like the mechanics of it could be a lot easier because it's point and click. You point and click to what you're wanting to do. I mean, people volunteering to DM and being excited to DM the next go around and stuff, that doesn't happen.
No. It really doesn't.
Like it's like, hey, you want to DM this? Oh, awesome! You want to play? Yeah, you could DM this one. I've got the flu that week.
Yeah, that's. I think that's how everyone gets into DMing. Is like, I want to play Dungeons and Dragons with this group of my buddies. Everybody's excited to play, and they're like, I'm not going to DM. I suck at it. And then you're stuck with the only one. You're like, well, shit. If I don't do it, we're not going to play.
No one plays.
I mean, that's kind of how I got into it. Now I love it, but I also love playing. So I always like to have a buddy that's willing to do it sometimes because I get ideas for characters too that need to be more than just NPCs. And that might be the way to get other people excited about it, like you said. Just making it as simple as, so what I imagine I can physically put in there and everyone can see.
And I don't have to do all the number crunching. It's just already there. Well, so now we can literally just click our abilities until we kill it.
Yeah, and D&D Beyond, the only thing that I actually still use from there is it's a really cool tool because just building an encounter, there's math involved. Well, they have a little tool on there that I can just add monsters, and it tells me how difficult the fight is. So I input how many players at what levels, and let's say I got 5 players at level 5. I can input whatever monsters, as many as I want, to make it a deadly encounter, because if you play easy, medium, hard, or very hard encounters, you're a wuss. You only play deadly encounters. Give the real chance of your players dying, because it makes them not be murder hobos, because no DM likes murder hobos. Because you're like, I built this wonderful story, and they just want to fucking kill everybody. That's because you didn't give them real consequences. That's a little rant that I had, and I'm sorry. But the fact remains.
And thinking of accessibility of something like this, even with the state that it's almost ready to release to everyone with the digital tabletop version of this, the tilt shifted, scenery, people with aphantasia like can't really play D&D successfully that I know of, because that's where you can't imagine things in your mind. Like, you can't see images in your mind. You cannot put them in there. Like, and that's something that, like, either people have an extreme case of that to where they just really just can't do it at all, and others that are put away from the idea of D&D because they don't feel like they have a good enough imagination for it.
Right.
Well, this takes that away, because here it is in front of you. Like, you no longer have to struggle with imagining these situations in your head. You see them in front of you. So these people with this condition can actually play the game
and actually enjoy it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And it's not as intimidating, I feel like. And of course, there's going to be people going like, D&D is a tabletop paper game. That's what makes it great. Yes, it is what makes it great for you and for anyone who loves it that way. And you can still do it. You don't have to touch technology with D&D because they're still bringing out the books.
Exactly.
Like, physical books will always be printed for D&D, as far as I know. And you can still play it that way. You do not have to use any technology involved with it. But
it makes it easier.
Yes, having the option there is going to bring so many more people into the game. And why not? Like, why would you not do that?
And that's the point, to keep it alive and well, because, we've seen a recent upsurge with, Critical Role and other D&D groups that are famous. So we want to keep it alive. We want to spread it and just share the joy of this game with other people.
Yeah.
And if that means taking it to the digital world,
do it.
That's great. Do it. And like you said, if you don't want to, then don't.
And Critical Role did something with their Vox Machina show that I didn't really think about until, I'd kind of been going through and rewatching it a little bit. And what they've got is, how you go through your quests and you always have that issue of, this one person can't be here, so what's their character doing right now? They did that with their, I think she was a cleric.
They've done it with a couple different ones. One lady, Ashley Johnson, she had a TV show, and one season she was a cleric. I think that's the one that
Yes,
they've made.
that was the
she
one.
was a cleric. I think her name was, I can't remember what her name
Well,
was.
they put that into the show to where they were going through like half the campaign and she wasn't there. But just because she wasn't there doesn't mean she wasn't doing something. She was at a temple trying to, try to figure out what the source of this fragmentation of her power was. So she was trying to figure that out. But in actuality, you're seeing what it's like to play D&D without that other person. So imagine being able to do that, having like preloaded story quest or something in case they missed. Like, oh, well, they're doing this. Here's what's happening, and everybody can freaking see it.
Well, that's also being creative as a DM.
Yeah,
because I've seen some DMs just NPC that character for a session, but they hit the back burner. They're there, like in combat if you need them, and to say something here and there, but they're not a full part of the story at that time.
Give them like googly eyes on their character or something so know they're not really there. You look into their dead, soulless Google eyes.
They're really sick today.
So, I mean, it's just D&D evolving and changing into something that will be able to be more accessible and better for more people. And I'm really excited about it because it just seems awesome to me. Even though now I got to buy more things.
But nothing is better than modern iterations of stuff that has been around in literature for a long, long time.
Right?
Yep.
Good setup.
And in quests to make it more accessible and better for a wider audience, sometimes that can really work. And sometimes it can really not work. We're talking about the Rings of Power, of course.
Here we go.
I'm going to try to limit my criticisms. Of course, I'm going to have to mention the lore a little bit, but I'm really going to try to limit that so that I can just talk about why I think it fails just as a thingy. So, spoiler fart. If you haven't seen it, then just listen to this and don't go watch it. And if you think it's going to make you mad. But at the same time, I think you enjoyed it probably more than I did, and I would like to hear maybe where I'm wrong and just another take, because I can be a bitter, fanboy at times. And I'm really trying to approach it from a standpoint that I'm just going to give them the lore breaking stuff. But that being said, I have to mention the lore first.
Yes. Get it out of the way.
Yes. From the very first moments I heard the elves sing, and I'm like, epic. I actually said that out loud. I was like, yes, I'm ready. And then we see the little elf children, and they're not elf children. They're just humans with pointy ears. Right from the beginning. They're just bullying Galadriel for no reason. And it just didn't strike me well. I was like, well, these aren't the regal, benevolent, angel-like elves that I'm used to. And I just immediately didn't like that all that much. And also, just for your protagonist, it's okay, they're bullied. It's like one of those tropes that you get to try to make a likable character. But to me, it just didn't seem like it really mattered much that she was bullied.
It showed her with a physical response to anger, which I think is the only thing leading, because the Galadriel we know before is very, like you said, regal and peaceful and not a warrior lady. In this, they're like, well, she can be that way because look, when she was a kid, she got mad and attacked this guy or this other kid. Right. So now we know she can be physical with things and attack things. So that's basically, I feel like when I was watching it, I was like, oh, they're just showing her do this as a kid. So that way, as she grows up, we're like, well, maybe it's not out of the question she would go do this fight because she did it as a kid.
Right.
I think.
So just establishing this more physical Galadriel.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Well, I think you're obviously right. I mean, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
I automatically just don't like that for an elf, especially for one of the most wise elves to ever walk Middle-earth. And so, yeah, immediately the lore is kind of already on my nerves. And as a hardcore fan, that's not a good way to go in the very first minutes of the episode. Plus, the bullying never really comes back. I mean, maybe it will in the later of seasons, but it just never really comes back to, like, explain itself. Like, why did you show us this? It doesn't really come into play. And then right off the bat, we get this clunker. I'm going to read it word for word. Do you know why a ship floats and a stone cannot? Because the stone sees only downward. The darkness of the water is vast and irresistible. The ship feels the darkness as well, striving moment by moment to master her and pull her under. But the ship has a secret, for unlike the stone, her gaze is not downward, but up, fixed upon the light that guides her, whispering the grander things that darkness never knew. And then Galadriel says, but sometimes the light shines just as brightly reflected in the water as they do in the sky. It's hard to say which way is up and which way is down. How do you know which lights to follow? And then he whispers to her, and we don't hear what he said till the end of the episode type thing.
And it wasn't even like a bomb drop of information.
All he said was, in order to see the light, you have to touch the darkness or something like that. Or you just don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
okay, first of all, can anybody make any sense out of this for me?
that was an attempt at trying to say something deep and meaningful.
And failing.
But it really failed because, here's the thing. Don't be stupid.
That's what I'm saying.
Don't be stupid.
And
that's the dumbest explanation I've ever heard.
I'm glad you said that because that's exactly what I felt right off the bat. They're trying to sound deep and failing miserably.
Yeah.
That's nonsense.
It's also sounding like, just this old person talking to a young child. Like, let me dumb down simple science for you since your tiny smooth brain can't get this.
But yeah, maybe. But still, it does seem that they think that because this is a fantasy world that basic physics and science shouldn't apply.
Like the idea of gravity can only be explained because it's a rock.
And we're going to get to more of this physics stuff here in a minute.
Well, it's also the reason that elves, are such good archers. It's not because they're skilled and they know the math and everything about how far their trajectory and everythking else is going, just because they really believe that those arrows are going to hit the target.
Arrow doesn't know the darkness of the
Well,
ocean.
first of all,
it only looks upward.
yeah.
It only sees the target.
It's hard to say which way is up and which way is down. That's oof. Okay, so like I said, more physics here in a minute. But then it's like, okay, we get Galadriel saying, oh, well, Finrod searched for Morgoth, or Sauron, but then Sauron found him first, and he died. And then she takes his thing, and she's crying over his body.
Right.
But it's like, you just told us that. We didn't get to see that, so why do I care? Like, what happened there, for one, is just a question. And then she goes on to say, and then the pain of those days passed out of thought and mind. And it's like, really? Because are you just the only one that lost somebody?
Yeah,
in this war?
It's a whole army of elves that go and die to this other army. And they make you believe that her brother died there on the battlefield just with all the other ones because the way the scene cuts over of her in the future after her brother went to war and she finds a helmet and puts it on and that visual of a pile of helmets was cool to show how many deaths there were and things like that. But then
I wonder who put the one on the very top, though.
Yeah, how they do that?
Yeah, I don't know.
On the side, but just the placement, I think, of her finding what she thought, what we think, I guess, is her brother's helm, of him dying there. Like, what makes him so special that Sauron would put his little emblem on his chest?
I killed your brother.
Yeah. It was a weird, wait, why though? Why did Sauron care enough about her brother to do that to him? Which maybe we'll find out later, but I doubt it.
Yeah.
I think he has served his purpose.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
Ghost like Wraith, hand me my small pitchfork brand.
Yeah. So this is all just the first few minutes of the episode. And it's just not looking good for me from here. But yes, I agree with you. Show us him die, or at least tell us what happened. Sauron found him first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe he found him in the sense he loved him first, and then Galadriel's brother broke up with Sauron.
Maybe.
That's why, because scorned lovers are the worst enemies.
After they just got matching tattoos.
Yeah. And that's why he put his mark on them.
Yes.
That's the rom-com version of this that we need.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
See, I figured it out for you.
So yeah, apparently Galadriel's the only one that remembers the war and that people died. And then they go to one of Sauron's old fortresses in the north, and then she fights this snow troll, which in itself, whatever. I don't care if Galadriel is very Well, I don't like Wonder Woman Galadriel, but trying to leave my bias out, there's still the character was in no danger at all.
Right.
The snow troll melts her elf friends, and then she just takes it down with style, with sword spinning. Awesome.
Even the cool, don't look behind you on the killing blow thing.
She gives us eye contact while she's spinning her sword. Okay, whatever. I would gawk at that even if it was somebody else, like
Right,
another
it's
elf.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. Elves are cool and they're BA. I'll give them that, but it's just like at least make her in some sort of danger. She was never in any danger.
And immediately after this snow troll is defeated, the other elves she's with lay down their swords to symbolize we're not going to follow you anymore. They don't know there's not another one around.
Yeah.
They put down their only weapon just to symbolize, hey, we're not going with you anymore. They could have just like
they're aware there's an
Yes,
audience watching.
Yes, they could have just put their backs together and been like, hey, we're not continuing on this journey
Or just,
anymore.
say it with dialogue.
Yeah, but instead it's like this symbolism of all their swords on the ground. I'm like, there could be other things.
But here's the thing: in like the Fellowship, you have my axe. That means I'm following you. That is
the opposite.
That is direct opposite. You have my sword, which means great. You have my weapon, and I'm walking away from you.
This
That's
was
stupid.
you can have it. I don't need it anymore.
And then within that
That's
same
still stupid.
within that same context too, like they could have done several different things to symbolize that same thing, like you were saying, as well as why didn't they go ahead and do that and then just kill them all with another troll? Just to show that there was still danger there. Their biggest fear to continue forward was how perilous everything had become. They just saw a couple of their friends get smushed by the troll, and they're very afraid, and then they lay down their swords. For those who haven't seen anything, that's ridiculous. They just got through this giant life or death battle, and they don't want their weapons anymore. Like, it's safe.
Plus, think of it this way. What if they actually found Sauron?
Yeah.
They would just get melted.
Yep. Yeah.
Also, somehow the torches don't give off any heat
Because it's so evil there.
because it's so evil, but yet they're still burning. Like if you take heat from a fire, it won't burn anymore. But then she thinks to pour water on a hot anvil.
She saw one snowflake land on it and go,
So somehow that's hot.
Right.
But her torches aren't, that are still burning. And then she pours water on it on the hot anvil, and somehow Sauron's mark freezes. It made zero sense.
well, as soon as one of them sees a troll, or was it a troll or a goblin? I don't know. What were they?
An orc.
An orc, like kind of like fused into the wall. She immediately knows what magic it is that caused that orc to like fuse into the wall or whatever. And I'm just like, which I mean, I'm sure they have information of all this, like looking around. But
I get why it doesn't work in this scene,
Yeah.
but Galadriel is supposed to be a lore master. So she would technically know.
they didn't
probably.
tell me any of that.
Right, because they're going for Wonder Woman instead.
Right.
Yeah, so that whole scene just really was like, huh?
Well, that's
what's happening? Plot.
That's because the heat had turned its gaze away from the hot.
Whatever.
And it didn't know which way was up and down.
It didn't know.
It had its eyes pointed the wrong way. It was thinking like a rock and not like a boat.
So physics actually takes hold, so elf physics means just depending on where you're looking, that's what's going to be happening. So, yeah.
Are you a rock or are you a boat, Marcus?
Something even more about the scene before moving forward. I guess it's a little moving forward. You may be getting to this, but she goes back with them, like back because they're like, okay, we're done with this. We're going back. You can do this alone if you want to. So she goes back with her company back to the elf like main like little place, and then after she goes all the way back, goes through this little ceremony of, hey, you guys did great on your journey. Then she says, if I have to do this alone, I will. You're right where he just was.
You were
and
convinced.
You were already there. Keep going. Like instead of going all the way back, now she decides she's going to do it alone. So she has to go all the way back where she just went. Like just because they wanted to show her being like uncomfortable in a ceremony for a mission that didn't really succeed anything.
Well, and I think they're trying to make her seem smart, but they're not successful at that either.
It's dumb. It's
Yes.
a dumb move.
Exactly. But then we have all of this before we even get the title screen.
Right.
Rings of Power. So finally we get Rings of Power, and then we get our not hobbits, but Harfoots. Not hobbits.
Right.
They're not hobbits, but
Okay,
they are
sure.
hobbits. It's so stupid.
But they're Harfoots.
Exactly. Yeah. It's because they don't have the right to say hobbit, like legally, and they're trying to say that the Harfoots are like these ancestors, so I'm having to refer to the lore again. But really, Harfoots are just another type of hobbit. Anyway, I don't know. It's just like, okay, I don't like slapstick in anything really, much less Tolkien. But then it's like, oh, well, we're getting berries because that's what kind of happened in Lord of the Rings. But now there's a wolf. It's just like generating some sort of phony conflict.
Yeah.
Because they needed it in that scene, I guess.
I'm sure the wolf will be back later as maybe. It may just be a nothing.
Probably.
But
it's just boring.
Like with you, the slapstick thing, like I'm down for once hobbits are on screen. It's a more lighthearted thing because their culture is very like,
lighthearted.
It seems lighthearted.
Yeah.
But it's almost like circus, like they're like circus people, like because like the music changed in such a way that it wasn't more lighthearted and fun. It was like a joke, like it's all a joke, and their little hidey places, it's cool.
Yeah, it's hard to put my finger on what I did disliked.
Yeah.
A lot about the hobbits. Mm-hmm. But it's just something's just off.
It's like
something's off with them.
They're trying so hard to get you to like them because they're a light part of this dark world. But they go so far into it that it's like, no, we really only want children to like these things because we really need to show you that they're not all this dark and gloomy people like everybody else is.
Comic relief or whatever.
But the two travelers that walk across that they're all hiding from, I want a whole show about those two guys because their little conversation they have is really funny. It
was one of the highlights of the episode, I'll be honest.
And they looked cool, like carrying these giant moose horns on their backs. And like just their little moment of conversation, I was like, this is my favorite part of the show so far. And I want to just see them experiencing the like Middle Earth.
And they're like throwaways.
Yeah, they're nothings.
Yeah.
Like they're just part of a prophecy that's in the Harfoot's little book that he sees later.
And then of course we get don't you ever wonder what's out there, where the rivers flow and where the sparrows learn their new songs? And don't you want to explore this fantasy world with us? Like, gosh, such just bad, lazy writing. I mean, that's just no way to put
Hobbits have never, in the history of any of this stuff, ever been, seem like they were trapped inside of one location and then wanted to venture out further. They've never done that before.
Well, apparently these are like nomadic hobbits, which doesn't make any sense.
Wouldn't they see everything if they're always having to be nomads anyway, like traveling to new places constantly?
The show didn't tell us that, so I'm gonna give it to them. But something's off about the hobbits. I don't know what it is. Why do they all have shrubs in their hair? Come on,
to blend in.
Yeah. Oh well, yeah, there is that because they were kind of camouflaging.
Yeah.
So Elrond is somehow not counted as a lord because he's half elven, even though he comes from like one of the three. Again, some lore. 3 lines of the Edain, and his brother is like chose a mortal life and became the king of Numenor. Whatever. I guess he's not important. And then they're like, your friend is here to see you. Not the Lady Galadriel is here to see you. Like, oh my God, like have some respect.
And then he goes, why didn't you say so? They did just say so. It's like the second thing they told you after this small amount of information they just gave you. And he's like, why didn't you tell me? I just did. I just told you.
And then their scene is just a bunch of clunky dialogue about, go home, Galadriel, but I want revenge. No, go home, Galadriel, but I want revenge. We don't care about the war. Like, we don't care about any of that stuff because they haven't shown us any of that stuff. Yeah. But it's just them saying the same thing over and over again.
At that part of that conversation where the fireworks are going off and stuff, I even put down the dialogue in here because Elrond's like, put away your sword, Galadriel. Well, what am I if not a warrior? And then he's like, you're my buddy.
A cool character.
You're my friend. It's like, you put away everything you've ever strived to be for your life goal because you're my buddy.
Yeah.
And it's just like, ugh.
First of all, why does a woodland race blow up fireworks too? That got on my nerves.
Yeah, I didn't understand that.
Yeah, that's stupid. That's just, no. Like, the elves are supposed to be these wise, but they're not just gonna hey, let's blow this up. Like, they're just not gonna waste resources and plus risk burning down their forests.
Elves. I'm sure there's redneck elves.
Not in Tolkien. Not in Tolkien.
Well, you've got
Amazon there.
Have you read the Salmonella? I mean, come on.
You've got the wood elves, and then you've got their deep cousins. The deep forest elves.
Yeah, I didn't. It just doesn't seem right to me. I think it was just a callback to the original trilogy.
Yeah, the dialogue in this show is so...
It's terrible.
It's just like they've cut and pasted it from just the most straight to VHS fantasy shows and movies.
It's really bad. And see, like, I had low expectations going in, and they've exceeded those, like, lower than I had. I thought it would be kind of like maybe seasons 5 through 8 of Game of Thrones, where most of it's garbage, and if you really think about it, it makes zero sense. But at least there's some moments where I'm like, and I'm like feeling like, because I still like these characters, and like there are times where really cool things happen that gives you chills, you know, like you can't help it. Nothing. I expected there to be something cool for a Tolkien fan. Nothing so far. And then she says, "Oh, I'm suffering so many times," but like they're just telling us that. They're not showing us her suffering. She's just barking it at us, saying, "Oh, I'm suffering. I'm blah 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 blah."
Yeah.
Revenge. It's a revenge story.
And it's purely because she lost her brother. Like there's no like it's only her picking up his journey of going and trying to find Sauron. Like that's it. But like you said, it doesn't really show, other than like the perilous track that they have to take, it's showing the lengths she's willing to go to, and plus her moving beyond what the rest of the pack is, because they're getting tired, and she's just moving. And it's like, okay, she has a lot of gumption in this. Like this means a lot to her, more than it does them. So in moments they do show that.
Yeah.
But as far as like the suffering part of it, it's like, we saw you cry over your brother. Ooh, that's kind of it. Like that's kind of it as far as, like you said, with suffering
Other
goes.
than that, his task is now mine.
And what were they congratulating them for? Like what were the fireworks for and all this other stuff exactly?
Okay, because they were getting to go back to the Undying Lands.
What
So
earned them that?
the king said so.
Okay.
Which is, if
So
we're going to have to go back to the lore, that's garbage. That's not how it works.
Because it lost me there. Because I was like, are they just getting rewarded because they went on this journey and came back?
They're basically just now saying, all right, I think Sauron's finally gone, guys.
Even though they found more evidence of him still living.
Well, she did.
She didn't tell anybody?
Well, I guess she did. I guess that's why she's trying to tell Elrond, and he's just like, no, just go home like the king says, you know?
Yeah.
We're just pushing you to the side. So yeah, I don't know. I guess that makes somewhat sense. It's just still not very compelling or interesting to me.
But I thought that was supposed to be an ultimate reward for something, them going back.
Well, it would be, but her people are the Noldor, and they are banned from going back because they followed her uncle Feanor to Middle-earth to chase Morgoth, who stole the Silmarils and killed his father. So yeah, lore. But basically, because the Valar did not want them to leave. They did not want them to chase Morgoth to Middle-earth, but they did anyway, therefore cutting off their right to go home until later on in the lore, where the Valar invite them back. Because at the end of Lord of the Rings, we see Galadriel go back, because when she talks to Frodo, she said she takes the ring and she says, all my desires could come true now. Like she's been let's just say she's been searching for Sauron, which she kind of has. She's been opposing Sauron for all this time. And so here in this moment, she could take Sauron's power from him and set up her own kingdom in Middle-earth. But then she's like, she gives it back to Frodo and she says, I've passed my final test. I will now go back into the West. And I just think that's really cool. Yeah, let me just get through the rest of these bullet points and then we can talk about whatever.
Yeah.
The whole thought, when our true king gets here, we could just get rid of you pointy-eared peoples. They're, again, obsessed with pointy ears in the show. And then this doesn't work because we don't have the backstory to any of that.
No.
They didn't say it. Are elves like cruel to these people, or is it just because they're occupying? Speaking of occupying, they've been there for 70-something years, or at least this elf has been there for 70-something years, creeping on all the young women, apparently. Until he gets him one. Yeah, weird. So he must have seen her from infant stages to old.
Oh, yeah.
And then we get an evil cow because the plot just has to happen to the characters rather than making the plot happen. And there's not really any context on why the Theo character even is at that barn to look for what's he looking for? Why is he there? But he found a sword. I don't know. And then literally at the end of the episode when they're about to sail into the Undying Lands, I'm like, what is she going to do? Swim back? And then sure enough, she jumps in. And at the beginning of the episode, they show you how far Valinor is away from Middle-earth.
It was so far that I was like, geez, man. Because I even had that thought in my head as the map was moving. I was like, there's no landmass in between these two?
So she literally gets all the way there before she jumps off the boat. And somehow expects to survive. I was at a loss for words at this point.
Well, she knew she would survive because she was looking upwards.
Oh, yeah.
While she was swimming.
That's why she floats.
She can't see.
Is that really what they were going for?
Maybe.
What if that's what was happening? She knew
Then
she wasn't
worse than I thought.
She wasn't going to sink and drown because she's going to keep her eye to the sky.
Oh, my God.
The moment that we hear what he said to her in the whisper was right before she jumped into the water.
You're
like
right.
to where he said you have, but I think that was more of he said you have to touch the darkness and find out or whatever. Like that was her going, okay, I could go into the light to go back home, or I could jump into like physically dive into the water, into the darkness, and go back to where it's, not safe. Like, I think that's what it was going for, but at the same time, it was a very physical, like you're in a boat, you're jumping into the water, and the whole conversation at the beginning episode was about a boat and water.
But did she say I'm a boat as she jumped?
I think she might
might
have been
as
thinking
well
it.
have.
Okay.
The look of the show, just to say something positive, is amazing.
It looks really
It
cool.
looks incredible.
At times. There's times where I'm like, but then whatever. I would not even complain about that.
Right. Overall, I think
if the story was good.
That alone, and just so I can keep up with all the craziness so you can tell me what all is insane about all this, is why I'm going to keep watching it, because of how incredible it looks, and because I'm just interested to see how far they're going to go with this. But something towards the end, when speaking about the elf that was occupying that little place or whatever, he goes on this little adventure with the lady that he's watched grow up as a little child and is now in a relationship with. And they go to find out where the evil cow came from. And they don't see the billowing black smoke of an entire village in flames until they take the crest of a small hill that's in front of it.
Right.
He has elven eyes, I think, right? So you think they don't even reference the fact that they think anything like this bad has happened to this place.
Or maybe like their smell.
Yeah, no smell, nothing until they go over this crest, and it's down a hill, and it's just everything's on fire. And that kind of like threw me off a little bit. I was like, how'd you not even be able to tell anything was going on?
And getting into the threat that caused all this stuff, and they go into the house and see the tunnel, and they find out what made the tunnel. How did the burrowing blind orc make the cow's milk turn to blood? It doesn't.
I didn't see the second episode, so I don't know that.
I think it's just like the land is getting sick type thingy.
Mm-hmm.
They did bad.
That's really what it is. Corruption in the land or something.
What's crazy is it's
because
fantasy.
that's Mordor. That's actually Mordor before it's corrupted. So
that's what that is.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's crazy is it's fantasy, so it's easy to make whatever happen in fantasy. It's fantasy. You can just whatever, but it has to be believable enough, and the story
and
has to
internally
happen
consistent.
well enough. Yeah, exactly. And that's not. It doesn't seem like that's what's happening. It seems like, oh, you guys already know Lord of the Rings. Like, it's a fantasy setting, so we can make a bunch of this random stuff happen because that all this other stuff has explanations. So we can just do whatever. Like you said, we can make the plot happen to the characters because you already like the other Lord of the Rings. It doesn't seem like its own thing right now. It seems like it's just pulling from everything else and slapping it into one like beautiful looking thing. But whenever you actually get a closer look at it, it's like none of this is really going together right.
Yeah,
it seems like to me.
And like I guess you could say, well, it's a slow burn. You just have to give it some time. It's like, okay, maybe. But for me, like these two episodes should have been like what hooks you and like what drives you wanting to see the next ones. I was bored. And and like I could complain about a lot of things about this show, but, lore aspected, but I don't even have to describe why I thought it was just boring garbo. And it's a really, 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 really expensive turd.
Oh yeah, it's so much money.
They forgot to buy good writers, I think.
Yeah.
And that's disappointing.
Yeah.
Because I thought at least some of it would be cool. I don't think it's going to be.
Maybe and cool and awesome doesn't even have to be battles and fighting and stuff. It's just like even dialogue that makes you think or makes you go, oh wow, like interesting conversations. Even the conversations that are supposed to be interesting are not very interesting.
No.
Like they're not making me question more or
like
wonder
there's no
something else.
There's no
like,
stakes, it seems, at this point.
Yeah.
And I think that a better prologue, much like the Lord of the Rings trilogy prologue, which sets up the conflict really, and shows you the stakes.
Yeah.
They tried, but they failed.
But it's just Sauron going away and hiding like somewhere else, so it's got to go find him.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, some of my bias may creep in here and there, but I think it's, not everybody has as good of taste as I do.
Yeah,
so.
they're probably just saving all the context and the plot for the extended editions. That's probably what
there you go.
God,
We can
it was
get
already long.
4-hour long episodes once this is over.
Director's cut.
We've already seen, like, it already exceeds, by the next episode, it will already exceed the extended editions.
Whoa.
I know, isn't that weird?
Yeah.
And that's how much happened.
Jeez.
So yeah, there's a 1-to-1 comparison that's pretty brutal. But of course, it's not going to live up to these legendary movies. I mean, nobody should have expected that.
And not all movies, that get stuff brought out about them later on, ends up being just hot stinking fecal garden. Hot stinkle. Hold on. Hot stinkle fecal Geeble.
Ring that bell.
Hot stinkle fecal Geeble.
Hot stinkle. Hot stinkle is a new, milder version. Yeah, not all of it becomes hot stinkle. Back in 1987, there was a movie that came out that featured a lot of big-name Hollywood actors at the time as far as the action series go, and including other ones that weren't really actors that just kind of stepped on a screen as actors, such as Jesse the Body Ventura, and then you get to see Apollo Creed in there as well. He was, oh man, I just lost Apollo Creed's name, but the guy that played Apollo Creed, he was in there as well, and Arnold Schwarzenegger was in that as well. In 1987, we had the first installment of The Predator. It's called Predator.
Yeah.
And that's where you get all the classic lines like, kill me, I'm here, kill me. If it bleeds, we can kill it. That you get a lot of those heavy.
Carl Weathers.
Yes, he was also the man that lost his hand to the alligator in the Billy Madison.
Yeah.
And
Wasn't he also in The Mandalorian?
Yes.
Yes. He is in Mandalorian.
But The Predator set out it has an entire series of movies that come after it. You've got Predator, you've got Predator 2, you've got Alien versus Predator, Alien versus Predator Requiem, you've got Predators, you've got The Predator, But I want to talk about today the newest iteration of it. That is my favorite iteration of it. It is called Prey. It was released earlier this year. It's a 2022 American science fiction action horror film based on the Predator franchise, 5th installment, and it is a prequel to the entire series. It is set in the Great Northern Plains of America in the year 1719.
Nice.
It revolves around a tribe of the Native Americans. I don't know if it actually tells what the actual tribe is that they're revolving around, but it is just a specific tribe of Indians. There's also other humans that are involved in this as well. There were the French fur trappers that were here exploring the wilderness and everything, and just here to basically kill the animals that you wouldn't be finding in the other parts of the world so they can harvest their expensive pelts.
Comanche.
There we go. Thank you, Tyne. And it was literally 3 lines down, but you saved me.
You did.
The thing that I like the most about it is this primitive nature that they show to it. I'm talking like the primitive nature of weapons, the primitive nature of wars, and just kind of the primitive nature of everything. And from us watching the Predator movies in the past, we're thinking, okay, there's this giant technologically advanced race of aliens. How are they going to be able to fight against, this? How are they going to do anything against these predator people, like these massive universal hunters that their one goal in their society is to make the biggest kill and to prove they are the most dominant predator out there? How is this going to fit? It's actually pretty awesome. You see a primitive step back in the technology of the predators as well. Because they're not having all of their lasers and they're not having all of their, their super explosive weapons and their extra field mines and this and that. Their weapons are more primitive as well because this is hundreds of years in the past. So not only would their technology as an alien race might be a little bit less advanced, it shows that. It also shows that the masking and the way that they style their armor and stuff used to be different as well back in the older days.
Plus, it could be like 10,000 years ago for them. Relative to space and time.
Exactly. So. And I really liked the way that they showed the struggle between like base human function as far as what technology is, because they literally had tomahawks, they had knives, they had black powder rifles, they had what else? Bows and arrows. They just very primitive stuff, but they had to be. They had to use their ingenuity in order to actually face off against this predator. And the predator did not see the female warrior as a threat because she was always, even though she was a very good fighter, what she would do is she would sit back and she would analyze things and watch things through a different, like, kind of try to take a step back and take a minute instead of just constantly just rushing in, battle, because that was the warrior's pride of the Comanche, was they were very good fighters, but they were also supposed to be fearless. By being fearless, you're also rushing headlong into it.
She was like a strategic thinker.
Yes. So even though they kind of tried to play her off as having this cowardice to her, that's the way her people saw her, but we didn't get to see that. We got to see calculation. We got to see planning and strategy. And she developed a weapon that was super primitive, but she made her own rope, and she tied it around her hatchet, and she was so proficient at throwing this hatchet, it was like, or tomahawk, whatever you want to call it, but she would have it and she would throw it against something and just be able to pull it right back to her with the rope. So she kind of almost made her own Scorpion style, like, get over here with the tomahawk. It was awesome. And they made fun of her for that. What, you afraid you're going to drop this? You need a string? There's my one downfall. There's some bad dialogue. I don't have instances of bad dialogue because I'm watching a science fiction horror genre film and I'm not really there for the talking. And first off, the French, incoherent amount of English, like what they're coming. We never did talking to the stupid Americans. Like that's kind of that stereotypical like thick-tongued French sound that you get, and that was the only like English they would speak in, like sparsely to each other, just like making bad comments and stuff that they know in the English tongue, and then they've got just them speaking French to each other the rest of the time with subtitles. Awesome, cool. I get by with that, but to make it more understandable to the audience, they don't have any Native American language hardly going on at all throughout it, like barely any of their native tongue happening. It's mostly English that they're speaking, but I think that's just to make it easier on the viewing audiences.
Right.
So would that be considered just rule of cool that they've done that, like no other explanation as to why it's happening, just it is?
I think it would be cooler if they spoke in their actual language.
I do too. If it was in subtitles and stuff, I would like that more.
I do too. I think it would be awesome. I just think it'd be a little bit harder to follow the movie for just like the No, you're
right.
Science fiction
it would
horror
make
genre.
it would make it way less accessible for the massive audience for sure.
Yeah. It was ease of watching is the only reason.
Yeah. Thoroughly enjoyed it though, because the mask of the Predator was also more primitive to wherever you see the old Predator movies. They've got multiple different ways of viewing stuff that they can shift through to where they've got one spectrum, another spectrum, heat spectrum, just seeing, regardless of what's out there, they're going to see it. Well, this one only has this heat spectrum where it can see. So that's its only form of technology it's got inside of its helmet that's allowing it to see everything around it, is that heat spectrum. So they're going to have to get around that.
Well, I've read several of the Predator novels, and that's actually how the Predators see, is in that heat light spectrum. So he's not using a filter.
Oh,
that's all he has.
So he's just primitive.
Yeah, that's literally how he sees with his eyes.
See, because I've only seen the movies, and I've never known that. So that's awesome.
That is cool.
So what I see is this is a success. As far as it goes in Hulu releases, it's been in the top 10 on Hulu since it released. It's still up there. They've also got it's an easy to follow story. There's no fumble bumbles throughout it that make you like question things to the point like, that wouldn't happen. It doesn't give you that. Like, yes, there's going to be that little bit of, I'll let it slide, but there's nothing catastrophic that happens throughout it. It's a very coherent story, very action-packed story, very awesome story to see the point of view of how she goes through everything and triumphs over everything. Now I'm going to continue even deeper into this, which got me so excited. The fans of this genre are calling for this, and I'm talking it's all over everywhere, where people are talking about what they would like to see as the future of the Predator franchise, because you can show these small steps forward in human time, and it might be that shift in time that's massive for the Predators to come back and have different, technology, because, well, they were sent here and now they're no longer active, so that means that they were killed by the creatures on this planet. What are we going to learn from this? How are we going to get better? A Predator movie set in feudal Japan in the time of the samurai.
And this is like a fan cast idea,
This is a fan cast idea. Now, I think that would be amazing, because you're not only going to be having to deal with an increased styling of weapons and technology that is available. There's going to be more guns that are available back in those days. They had I think it was in the mid 1800s you started having the Gatling technology actually come out, where there's the multiple firing barrels on stuff. So you had
more hand crank operated.
Yes, and so you had your actual ability to shoot more bullets quicker. You still had to reload the entire barrel of everything after you got through firing, however many was on that rotation, but it was still quicker than what you'd ever get by doing a single powder load, reload it, and then fire. It would save you just so much time. So I mean, that kind of stuff could be incorporated into it. You can go into your samurai swords with the kind of folded, super strong steel that they had created then that they did not have back in the actual Prey movie. So, but what they're calling for is actor Hiroyuki Sanada. He was the one that played Scorpion in the Mortal Kombat movie.
Oh, he's good.
Because the beginning of the Mortal Kombat movie, and this is, I'm not going to say arguably, because factually was the best part of the Mortal Kombat movie.
The only good part of that movie.
When it was set in that feudal Japan era, the way it was shot, the way it was, like, just the tone of everything. Insert Predator into something like that. But I'm not doing what the fans say. I'm doing it because it's actually in Mortal Kombat.
Right.
Because if they
Cabal or something.
Well, no, because
the Predator.
the Predator was first introduced into the Mortal Kombat realm during Mortal Kombat 10. And the Predator was given a small backstory and was given put into the Mortal Kombat universe to use as a fightable character. So you could actually put that on screen and have the same actors, playing, Scorpion and Sub-Zero in that kind of fashion and style, but the Predator is now shifted into that universe. They wouldn't have to hardly change a thing about it. They would just have to be them versus the Predator. But it, of course, wouldn't be them in their, their changed forms and stuff to where they're actually Sub-Zero and actually Scorpion. But it would still be that cool samurai style to be able to go along with them and show how they.
Well, we could make them become Scorpion and Sub-Zero on the way.
Yeah,
and then, or maybe a post-credit scene to where it shows them as Sub-Zero and Scorpion, and then the newest iteration of the Predator comes along.
Mortal Kombat versus Predator versus Alien versus Godzilla
versus Marvel versus Capcom
versus Lord of the Rings.
But I would really like to see that in a movie, just because I love the way that feudal Japan era was shot in the Mortal Kombat series. I like the idea of their actors coming back and reprising their roles as those samurais like they were, because they did an amazing job of selling that. I also think that the later iterations of the Predator mask kind of give me that samurai vibe to them. So it would be awesome if they took inspiration from their times as to how they were going to recreate their armor and make their technology better, reminiscent of the things that have defeated them in the past. So give it like a little bit of a, because in that first Predator movie, it had that slick face with the big eyes kind of thing. It really kind of reminded me a lot of a samurai mask.
Well, realistically, their face alone kind of looks like Oni masks anyway.
Oh, and that
putting that in there could give you background to lore of the Oni. It could be a predator,
and that could absolutely explain why they are, hell-bent of, to put their dispute aside, because now there's this otherworldly Oni, as they recognize it, there, and now they've got to fight it.
It kind of writes itself.
Yeah. So there we go. Fans want samurai. Shazam wants Mortal Kombat. So, take it as you will, but I think it'd be very entertaining, and I'm all about being entertained. Because I watched the Lord of the Rings, the first 2 episodes of the Rings of Power myself, and I was entertained just because I'm a dumb boy to it all, and I just allow it to happen because I'm looking at the visuals, I'm being led along, and I'm like, oh, let me follow what the pictures do. And if you like movies and shows that say, let me follow what the pictures do, you would love the Samurai versus Predator.
Yeah, well, and I just enjoy being critical as well. To be fair, and that's part of the fun.
I think part of the fun of this podcast is being critical and doing that with each other, and especially when we agree on stuff and even slightly disagree on stuff. Like you said, you like watching the pictures go by, and Marcus hates the lore breaking, and I'm like, I'm a dialogue freak. And I was just watching it, that took me out of it. But hopefully the dialogue in this episode was enough to keep you all entertained. So thank you for listening on iTunes and Spotify and Good Pods and CastBox and all the other stuff. and rate us 5 stars on there and put comments as to why you love us or why you hate us. As long as there's 5 stars, that's all I really care about. And then go on Redbubble. I will remember the name of that website one day, like I just did. Redbubble.com. We've got a link in the description to go buy stuff from there that have our things on it, like t-shirts and hats and such. And go do that, because people will see you in it and they'll go, hey, high five, you look cool in that weird face that's opening up to a microphone that's purple.
And if you'd like to, give us what your action is going to be, we're going to tell you what is going to succeed or fail about it, but only if you can message us through our Instagram, our Twitter, or our Facebook by looking up at Nerd Grapevine. It's most likely going to be Tiny that answers that, just because I don't DM. Tiny's the DM. He's the one who's the token DM in this group. So.
Yeah.
And also, you can get on Patreon, donate a little bit to the cause, receive a shiny holographic Nerded Through the Grapevine sticker, and you'd be able to unlock content from Grape Flavored Gaming. And, maybe if you're a Patreon subscriber, we might just surprise you with something really, really cool here in the future.
Oh, yeah. I was making something like that, huh?
Yeah, we were doing something really cool with that kind of stuff. I was just basically sitting there shouting ideas, and Dane was doing all the work, but that's how things work sometimes. Yeah. And you know what? If you're in the room when that kind of thing happens and you've got this one guy that has nothing but just ADHD brain and a lot of crazy ideas, and you got this one guy that's really technical that's just trying to get it all done, just try to satiate his brain, and it causes him to have a little bit of
Discord. Find us on Discord. There's a link in the description. We can talk about memes. We can talk about rings of power things or predators, which are one of my favorite monsters. So hit us up. Like I said, there's a link in the description. We're on there live, uncut, uncensored, and irrevocably circumcised.
But sometimes the light shines as brightly reflected on the grape as it does in the sky. How do you know which way is up and which way is down? And what do you do when life gives you grapes, Dane?
I go on a journey with the one grape that I have, because I will avenge the other grape I used to have, because somebody put a stamp on it and it made me really sad, because they squished my grape and they put a stamp on it. I'm like, I'm going to find that stamp giver. I'm going to find them one day. So I'm going to take the one grape that I do have, and I'm going to climb Ice Mountain, and I'm going to get real close to finding the one that squished my grape and put a stamp on it that was really offensive to me. And then all my friends are going to go, we don't like this anymore. And they're going to go home, and I'm just going to go back with them, because it's not really that big of a deal, right? But it is. Because I got to find the stamper with the grape. There were no rings in the show. I didn't see a single ring of power.
One grape to
Not
rule
one.
them all.
And in the
There were none.
nerdness bind them.
I didn't see. There was nothing that was ring shaped in the episode, as far as I remember.
He's got to build a forge, remember?
No, whatever.
So that he can build the ring.
Whatever.
He hasn't
You
seen
can build me a
episode 2
butthole
yet.
and
He's got to watch
poop on
episode
it.
2.